In the last lesson, we took a look at how to connect to the MySQL database system, and in this video I want to go ahead and focus in on how to actually create a database from PHP itself. I'm going to have to reuse this code, the connection that I have set up, and so what I'll do is just copy the whole thing, just do a Control C to copy it all, and file new, paste it all in there, and I'm going to go ahead and save this page, save as. I'm in my lessons folder, which is in the www folder of the WAMP server, and I'm going to call this one create database.php. I'll go ahead and save it, and I've got all the code there for us now for our actual connection to the database. So now what we'll do is focus in on how to actually create a database within PHP code itself. And so the code for this is not that hard. In fact, what we're going to use is just an SQL statement. And I have a whole series on lecture snippets that deals with SQL. In fact, I was working with Oracle. However, most of it's going to end up being the exact same statements that we're going to enter in here to work with PHP or to work with MySQL itself. So the SQL statements are what's going to be most important from this point on working with our databases, because that's the statement that we're going to pass in to the database to actually perform some kind of action. So the code that I want to use, or the function that I want to use, is going to be really simple. It's just MySQL and then underscore query. And that will allow us, and this is a function, so I'll go ahead and put the parentheses, that will allow us to pass something into the database system. And so what I want to do now is, what I want to pass in here is a string of characters, or basically an SQL statement that's going to end up telling it to create the database. And it's real simple. All we start off with is the double quotes, and we'll just type in create and then database. And that is the keywords that are needed to create a database. What I also need to do is tell it what database that I want to have, or the name of the database. So after I've got create database in there, I'm going to go ahead and put a space after the database and create myself a name to work with. And I'm just going to call this database snippets. So that'll create the actual database system itself, and I'll end that with the double quote. Now that's the query that's getting passed in there. I also have one more parameter to add to this, and that is what connection do I want to use for my database system. And so what I want to use here is going to be the $CON, or the connection that I have saved up here at the top. So I'll need to add that to this particular function itself. Once that's there, then I can go ahead and this will actually run the code for us. If you wanted to do something a little bit more different than just running this, for instance, if you wanted it to echo out something to us to tell us that it's done the job that we had required, we could of course put this in some kind of conditional statement, and if it would ended up being true that this actually ran for us, we could echo out a statement like the database was created. Or we could also do an else statement that says that we have an error. And so this is all I really need. However, if I want to dress it up a little bit better within my code, then what I could do is put it in an if statement. So let me go ahead and put if, and then I'll put my quote or parentheses all the way around that whole entire statement or function that I had here called MySQL query. And now if that returns true, what we want to end up happening is for it to echo out some code for us. And so now that I've converted it over to an if statement, what I'll need to do is remove that, there we go, semicolon, and replace it with an opening parenthesis or curly brace, sorry, and an ending curly brace. And so if this is true, what I want to end up happening is that it echoes out a statement that says basically your database was created. There we go. And I'll end that with a semicolon, and we'll delete that line up. There we go. So that'll run if it ends up being successful. If it ends up being false, what I could do is type in the keyword else. And so I could echo out some kind of error. So in fact, if I just type in else here, else, let's go ahead and echo out error. I'll put a semicolon, and I'll go ahead and end that with a double quote and concatenate the MySQL error function, same one that I used up here on line 8. So we'll just put MySQL underscore error, and we'll go ahead and put the function parentheses there and end that with a semicolon. And that should add to it any kind of errors we may have. So let me go ahead and hit save. Let's go ahead and refresh our page over here. Actually, I'm going to navigate to the page. So I'll go back one here. There we go. So now I'm on the index of lessons. So if you're following along, it's under the localhost page, my lessons folder project, and then you can see that I've got, let's see if I refresh it. There we go. I've got create-database.php here. So if I click it, it does say that your database was created successfully, which means that it ran through just fine and I didn't have any errors. If I open up another tab here, and I'll maximize my browser so we can see it a little bit better, and navigate to localhost and then the PHP my admin page, we can actually see that our database was created. And there it is, the snippets database we created here within this lesson. So it actually worked. It created the database for us. It told us that it was created, and I can actually see it there. So let me go ahead and restore this down to the size that I'm working with. Okay, so now let's try to get an error. If I refresh my page again, you're going to see that I get my error. So there it is. It echoed out the word error, colon, and then what it echoed out now was the actual error. Cannot create database snippets. Database already exists, pretty much is what it tells us. So this is going to give me the error. If I already had a name there, it will return to us whatever our problem was. So in this lesson, we went ahead and used our connection to the MySQL database system, and we created a database named Snippets using the MySQL query function, and it passed in a SQL statement that just basically said, and this is SQL's programming language, which said create database and then the name of the database that I wanted to create. So now I can do that from the PHP code. In the next lesson, what we're going to work on is creating a table within the Snippets database.